Today's case brings us to Ireland, and to the County Cork, a city not too small or too big, and is Ireland's third largest city. The best way to experience this city is on foot. Cork is considered to be a very safe place to live, and it is known to be safer than most European cities. The Cork accent is one of the strongest on the island of Ireland, and it is often described as musical. It has an odd sing-songy ring to it, and is mocked by some and beloved by others. And today's story begins with Robert Holohan, an 11-year-old boy from Cork. Just off the back of Christmas, he had got a bike as a gift. He was a happy, sporty kid and was into all things sporty. He was the oldest of his siblings, Emma 8 and Harry 4. He was a confident and happy kid, and he lived with his family at their home in Middleton, County Cork, a place with green fields and friendly neighbours. At about 2 p.m. on the 4th of January 2005, Robert set out on his new BMX bike with his new mobile phone in his pocket. He was able to buy this with the money he had been given over Christmas. He cycled down the driveway of his house and off he went. At 3:30 that afternoon, Magella, Robert's mum, she called him on his mobile phone, but it rang out. She wanted to know what he wanted for dinner. But she wasn't worried. He was a kid out playing with his new bike. Maybe he had lost track of time. She rang him 6 times between 3:30 and 5:30, getting more worried as each call rang out. As the darkness fell, her worries became real. Robert didn't like the dark, and he would always be home before it got dark. When Mark, Robert's dad, arrived home at 5:30, she told him she doesn't know where Robert is, and that he wasn't answering his phone. From there they checked with neighbours, as they thought he was going to be at one of their neighbours, the O'Donohues, as they have a 20-year-old son who Robert adored, and they would be happy to have Robert around. But their 20-year-old son Wayne said he didn't see Robert since before lunchtime. Meanwhile, Robert's parents rang everyone they knew to check if they seen Robert. They followed this up with getting into a car and checking likely spots he would be, but he wasn't at any of them. The Gardaí were then called, who began door-to-door inquiries in the area. And at around 9 p.m, Gardaí got a call from a local man, Tom. Him and his son spotted a bike in a ditch while they were walking home, and they took the bike home with them to try and locate the owner, as the bike looked fairly new. But then they heard about the missing boy. It was clear now Robert wasn't out with friends or off somewhere on his bike. He was missing. By 11 p.m, word of the disappearance had spread through the area, and the community searched the area for Robert. But it got really late, and they had to put an end to it for the night. The following morning, the 5th of January, the search resumed, and was becoming ever more serious as the minutes went on. And by the afternoon, the missing boy was all over the national news. And by the next morning, the 6th of January, the media swarmed the small village covering the story of the missing boy. And the longer the boy was missing, the more certain people believed something bad had happened to Robert. The searches continued with a headquarters set up at a nearby golf club. Small rivers were searched, along with ponds drained in the local and extended area. CCTV footage was gathered, but he was not on any footage from around the area. It seemed that Robert didn't leave his road that day, and the Gardaí were no closer now than they were at day one. By Sunday the 9th of January, the searches were still going along, with more volunteers and the civil defence also getting involved. In the local church, a special Mass of Hope was held for Robert, and by the following Tuesday, the 11th of January, Robert had been missing for a week, and Gardaí began a reconstruction of Robert's movements. The next day, a detailed statement was read to the media. The media were all invited into a room, and while they were there, the Gardaí got word something had been found. The word travelled fast, and soon the media jumped into their cars and vans, and they began travelling south toward Instrand. That afternoon, just after 2 p.m, one of the searchers was combing through the heavy brush near the beach with a stick when he saw a shoe. The alarm was raised, and with the confirmation of the clothes Robert was wearing when he disappeared, it was confirmed to be the body of the missing boy. Gardaí then sealed off the area and carried out examinations. Gardaí then went door to door in this area to try and get information from the locals, if they had seen anything at all out of place. The next day, Robert Holohan's body was removed from the location in a hearse, and he was taken to the University of Cork for the post-mortem examination. That evening, Gardaí held a press conference in a hotel. They confirmed they were in the process of eliminating 36 people who are known to be sex offenders in the area. This was shocking news for the local community. Many of them were not on the sex offenders registry, as when they committed their crimes, the registry was not in place, and this would unlock a new fear in the small town. The Gardaí closed off the conference, asking Robert's killer to bring themselves forward and make themselves known. The next day, the post-mortem examination was complete, and investigators learned more about what might have happened that day. It was clear there had been no sexual assault, and that Robert had died from asphyxiation while being in a headlock, and the person Gardaí were looking for would have good upper body strength. Next to Robert's body at the scene was his mobile phone and a black plastic bag that Gardaí were able to pull fingerprints from. It was clear that the roadside near the beach was not where Robert had died. It was believed he was wrapped in the plastic bag and placed at this location. Robert's funeral was held on Saturday, the 15th of January, in the Holy Rosary Church in Middleton. He had been kept in a sealed coffin on advice of the Gardaí. That day, the whole town closed down. Shops and pubs closed one by one, with nearly 4,000 people attending the funeral, and only 2,000 making it inside the church. Everyone was there, showing their respect for Robert. Sean O'Halpin, a hurling player and a hero of Robert's, said the prayers of the faithful. Robert's neighbour Wayne, who was described as the big brother Robert never had, he said he felt responsible. He told his girlfriend if he had just taken Robert into town like he had asked that day, none of this would have happened. The next day, the Gardaí got a phone call. It was from a family member of one of the Holohan's neighbours. They asked the Gardaí to call out to them as they had information on the case, and the Gardaí arrived to the O'Donoghue household a short while afterward, and a voluntary interview took place. That afternoon, close to 9 p.m, Gardaí brought Wayne O'Donoghue, Robert's neighbour and close friend, to the station. No real details of the arrest were given, but the locals knew an arrest was made of a 20-year-old neighbour who was close to Robert, and they had also taken part in the search for Robert. And the next day, just after 8 p.m, Wayne O'Donoghue appeared in a court in Middleton. Evidence was given against him for the unlawful killing of Robert, and he was charged and remained in custody. Locals were horrified. A friend and a neighbour was the one charged with Robert's death, and Wayne even had the audacity to go out searching for Robert, all the while knowing he had ended his life. Wayne O'Donoghue was from a good family, and he was an engineering student, while also being in a relationship. He was a normal 20-year-old man. What had happened? On Tuesday the 29th of November 2005, the trial for the murder of Robert Holohan began. And a drained looking Wayne pled not guilty to the murder, but he pled guilty to manslaughter. But the state was adamant in pursuing the murder plea, so the trial went on. Robert's mum took to the stand, and she said Robert loved the outdoors and had very mild ADHD. She told the jury that day he had been all about his new bike. She then spoke about how her worry set in and that she rang Wayne when he went missing. But Wayne said he didn't see Robert since lunchtime, and Magella said Wayne sounded normal and not out of place. The third day of the trial, a number of witnesses took to the stand, going into detail about Wayne's demeanour on the day Robert went missing and also during the searches. A friend of Wayne's said he spoke to him on the phone after Robert had went missing, and he said he seemed worried but normal, nothing out of the ordinary. Gardaí said when they interacted with Wayne during the search, he would become aggressive. And Gardaí called off the searches a couple of times due to heavy rain. He would say they were wasting time and burning daylight. He seemed overly interested in what areas they were searching and where the next searches would take place. A man who volunteered with Wayne while searching for Robert also took the stand. He said Robert was telling him how he was the last one to see Robert alive, as Robert asked Wayne to go into town that day to get some chips. The man said, "So you were the last to see him alive?" And then he asked, "Did you kill him?" He said Wayne suddenly shut off and got very quiet. The Gardaí then took to the stand, and they said the morning Wayne confessed to the manslaughter of Robert, he went to the local shops to get a newspaper, and he seen the story all over the place. He couldn't take the guilt anymore, and he told his dad he was sorry. His father began crying, and his mother came in to see what was wrong. Wayne had told his parents everything. They then rang the Gardaí, who came and took a statement from Wayne, which took 7 hours. In the statement, Wayne said Robert came to his house to ask him to bring him into town, but Wayne had already been to town a few times that day, so he said no. The two slagged each other and Robert left the house. As he was leaving, Robert picked up pebbles and threw them at his car. Wayne said he walked over to Robert, gave him a nudge and told him to F off. As he walked back to his house, he felt pebbles hit the back of his head and he seen more hit his car. As Wayne then walked over to Robert, who was standing by his bike, he put his right arm around his neck and jerked him away from his bike. He released his grip with his right hand, but was still holding him by the scruff of his neck. Nothing was said between the pair at this stage. Wayne said he then moved his left hand up to Robert's Adam's apple and said, "Will you stop with the stones at the car?" He said he didn't remember how long he held him for or how tight, but said it wasn't too long. He then released his left hand from around Robert's neck, and Robert then fell to the ground. When he realised Robert was dead, he stood in front of the bathroom mirror with a knife intending on ending his own life, but he couldn't. He then wrapped Robert's body in plastic and dumped him at the location he was found. Wayne's girlfriend also took to the stand and stated she had never seen Wayne get upset or angry at Robert, and that he was like a little brother to Wayne. She continued saying she couldn't believe it, and it was so out of character of Wayne. She closed off by saying, still after all that had happened, she still loved Wayne. The next day, the jury turned their attention to the screens, where they would be shown a number of videos. The first was Wayne, and he was in the Middleton Garda station, right after he gave the Gardaí the 7-hour statement. In the clip, Gardaí were reading over the statement to Wayne, where he described what had happened in his day leading up to it and after it. He placed Robert's body and Robert's bike into his car, and he dumped Robert's bike, and then he placed Robert's body into the ditch he was found in. Before the recording was finished, Wayne said, and I quote, "I am deeply sorry for what happened. Robert was a good friend and like a brother to me. If I could swap roles, I would. I did not intend to harm him. What happened was a fluke, an accident. I am sorry I did not come forward earlier to explain what happened." End quote. During the trial, the defence had a report that the cause of Robert's death could have been due to interference with the vagus nerve, with very little compression to the neck. In rare cases, it can pinch the vagus nerve, which runs down to the heart, causing an immediate cardiac arrest. The defence stated this was likely as there was no sign of any violent struggle. But the prosecution disagreed that the vagal nerve being pinched was the cause of death. Force had been used, they said. The judge swayed towards the defence's argument, saying it was an accident. It makes no sense for a young man to kill a boy he was friends with. Wayne was building a treehouse for Robert, and the judge stated it did not paint a picture of a person who would brutally go and attack and kill a boy. And on the 14th of December, the jury found Wayne O'Donoghue not guilty of murder. But as Wayne admitted to manslaughter before the trial, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for this charge. The prosecution appealed this sentence, stating the age difference of the two were not taken into account when the sentence was handed down. The appeal, however, was denied, and Wayne would serve his 4-year sentence as originally ordered. In mid-January 2008, Wayne O'Donoghue was released from prison after serving 3 of his 4-year sentence. He was released early due to good behaviour. From outside the prison, he made a statement, and I quote, "I fully accept responsibility, not only for the loss, but also for the additional grief and distress which I have caused to Robert's family. I realise and accept that nothing I may do or say will ever ease their suffering. I feel and carry the burden of guilt for my actions each day. I also profoundly regret the hurt and distress which I have caused to the wider community. I can only repeat my sorrow and ask for forgiveness. I intend this to be my only statement on the matter." End quote. After this, Wayne O'Donoghue left Ireland and he moved to England, where he changed his name and took up studying again, where he had met a woman. What had happened on this day was horrific. Whether it was an accident or intentional, the lives of two close families were torn apart, along with the loss of an 11-year-old boy. I doubt the Holohan family will ever forgive the loss of their son, but hopefully one day they can find peace in the fact he didn't suffer in his final moments. Thoughts go out to the Holohan family. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.